The winter light barely reached through the narrow windows of Pembroke Castle when Margaret Beaufort entered the most dangerous room of her life. She was 13 years old. She was heavily pregnant, and she was already a widow. Beyond the chamber walls, the country was breaking apart in dynastic war. Inside, household women prepared linen, warmed water, and guarded the door. Margaret's husband had died in captivity almost 3 months earlier. The child powerful men had expected from their marriage now had to survive without him. No eyewitness left a reliable account of the labor. We do not know how long it lasted, what complications occurred, or exactly what Margaret endured. But more than 50 years later, John Fisher, her later confessor and bishop, described the birth as extraordinary because of her youth and small physical size. Margaret survived. The infant survived. He would become Henry VII, founder of the Tudor monarchy. Margaret never bore another recorded child. Historians often infer that the birth caused lasting physical injury. That is medically plausible, but it cannot be proved. The darker certainty lies earlier. A wealthy heiress had been married at 12, made pregnant before 13, and valued above all for the estates and bloodline her child could carry. The Tudor dynasty did not begin with a crown. It began with a child inside a fortress, delivering another child into a civil war. So how did England's dynastic system turn Margaret Beaufort into a pregnant political asset? And how did the son born from that system become king? If you're drawn to the darker corners of history, subscribe to Grimmer History. We're on our way to 45,000 subscribers. Margaret's danger began before she could remember her father. She was born in 1443 as the only legitimate child of the Duke of Somerset. Through the Beaufort line, she descended from a powerful Lancastrian branch of the royal family. That ancestry connected her to the crown, although the Beaufort right to inherit it remained politically disputed. Her father died before her first birthday. Margaret inherited wealth, land, and a name that mattered. She did not inherit control over any of them. Because her father had held land directly from the crown, the king could control Margaret's wardship while she remained a minor. Wardship was not merely guardianship in the modern sense. It could give powerful adults access to a child's estates, household, and marriage. A wealthy orphan was not only someone to protect, she was an opportunity. Margaret was first connected in childhood to the son of another noble family. That arrangement was later dissolved. In 1453, King Henry VI transferred her wardship to his maternal half-brothers, Edmund and Jasper Tudor. Henry VI was the fragile Lancastrian king whose dynasty faced growing uncertainty. His hold on government weakened as rival nobles gathered around the House of York. The king needed loyal relatives, dependable estates, and more branches of blood connected to the Lancastrian cause. Margaret could provide all three. Edmund Tudor, Henry VI's approximately 24-year-old half-brother, became her husband. The marriage joined a royal half-brother to a rich heiress with Beaufort blood. Margaret was 12. Canon law generally recognized 12 as the minimum marriageable age for girls. That legal threshold did not make pregnancy at 13 ordinary. Most medieval people married later, and even among aristocrats, historians have described Edmund's decision not to delay consummation as unseemly. Margaret's formal assent may have been recorded, but consent inside royal wardship was constrained by hierarchy. The king selected the match. Her guardians controlled her circumstances. Her inheritance gave adults a reason to move quickly. Her private feelings do not survive. That silence is not an empty space historians may fill with convenient emotion. We cannot say she welcomed the marriage. We cannot claim she resisted. We cannot invent a conversation in which she understood what was being arranged. The records preserve what the system valued: wardship, property, legitimacy, and lineage. They do not preserve the 12-year-old at the center. By the spring of 1456, Margaret was pregnant. The political plan had produced what it wanted. Then the war closed around her. England's conflict between Lancaster and York did not begin as a clean war between two armies. It spread through local feuds, rival households, shifting loyalties, arrests, confiscations, and sudden changes of power. In South Wales, Edmund Tudor attempted to defend Lancastrian authority while Yorkist influence grew. He was captured in August 1456 and imprisoned at Carmarthen Castle. Margaret was 13 and several months pregnant. Her husband remained a political asset even in captivity, but imprisonment exposed him to disease and neglect. In November, Edmund died of plague. The marriage had lasted barely a year. Margaret was left widowed before the birth of the child the marriage had been accelerated to produce. At this point, Jasper Tudor, Edmund's younger brother and Earl of Pembroke, became essential. Jasper had his own lands, military responsibilities, and loyalty to Henry VI. He also had a direct interest in protecting his dead brother's unborn child. Margaret was taken to Pembroke Castle. The fortress offered stone walls, towers, guards, supplies, and the protection of Jasper's household. Beyond it, roads and towns could change hands with political fortune. Inside, Margaret entered a controlled world of servants, clerks, chaplains, and experienced household women. Protection did not mean freedom. The same structure that had selected her husband now determined where she lived, who guarded her, and what would happen to her child. A widowed heiress remained valuable. Her future marriage could redirect lands and alliances once again. The unborn child carried even more political meaning. Through Margaret, the infant would possess Beaufort blood. Through Edmund, it would descend from the Tudor connection to the Lancastrian royal house. If the child were a son, he would become an heir to estates, loyalties, and claims that might survive even if the Lancastrian court did not. No one in Pembroke could know what that child would become, but they understood what he represented. The system surrounding Margaret was built from four forces. The crown controlled wardship, aristocratic marriage redirected property, canon law allowed adults to treat a 12-year-old union as legitimate. Dynastic politics gave exceptional value to a surviving boy. None of these forces required a written record of Margaret's fear. They required only that she remain married long enough to conceive, protected long enough to deliver, and alive long enough for the child's legitimacy to be secure. Margaret's body had become the narrow passage through which estates and bloodlines had to travel. Yet the story was not inevitable. Childbirth was dangerous at any age. Margaret's youth and small size increased the concern remembered by later generations. The infant could die. Margaret could die. Both could be lost, and the entire political calculation would end inside one chamber. As January approached, Pembroke's walls could keep out soldiers. They could not remove the danger already inside them. On 28 January 1457, the doors of Margaret's birth chamber closed. The dynasty powerful men wanted now depended on a 13-year-old widow surviving the night. The room in which Margaret gave birth cannot be reconstructed with certainty. Pembroke Castle survives, but the exact chamber is unknown. No account identifies the midwives by name. No trustworthy record gives the hour labor began, the position in which Margaret delivered, or the remedies attendants used. We can describe only what was typical, without pretending it was documented. A noble birth chamber would be restricted largely to women. Heavy curtains could enclose the bed. A hearth, candles and lamps would struggle against the January cold. Linen, basins, cloths and warm coverings would be prepared. Elsewhere in the castle, chaplains and household servants might wait for news. At the center was Margaret, 13, widowed, surrounded by adults whose records would later describe the child more clearly than the mother. Her body was not fully grown. That fact made the birth unusually dangerous, but no medical report survives. John Fisher preached Margaret's funeral sermon 52 years afterward. He said the birth was a wonder because she was so young and of such small stature. Fisher was not an eyewitness. He had not even been born when Henry arrived. His words preserve Tudor family memory, religious interpretation, and the belief that Margaret's survival had been extraordinary. They do not provide a diagnosis. The distinction matters. It is tempting to describe the labor as an established medical catastrophe. Many biographies suggest permanent injury. Some state that the birth destroyed Margaret's ability to conceive again. The evidence cannot support that certainty. What we know is narrower and more powerful. Margaret gave birth to a living son. She never bore another recorded child. The possible explanations remain open. Physical injury, psychological trauma, later infertility unrelated to the delivery, limited opportunity within subsequent marriages, deliberate avoidance of another pregnancy, or a combination no surviving document can reveal. The historian must stop where the record stops. The storyteller must not invent beyond it, because uncertainty about the medical consequence does not erase certainty about the political cause. Margaret had not designed the marriage that placed her in the chamber. Henry VI had redirected her wardship. Edmund had chosen not to postpone consummation. Civil war had removed her husband. Jasper had taken control of her protection. Every major decision had been made by someone older. The system had engineered the pregnancy. Now women inside the chamber had to keep mother and child alive. Outside, the castle continued functioning. Clerks recorded provisions. Guards watched the approaches. Messengers waited. Jasper's authority held the household together, while the event that would define his family occurred behind a closed door. At last, the child was born, a boy. He was named Henry, linking him symbolically to Henry VI and the Lancastrian dynasty that had created the marriage. The immediate political result was success. Edmund's line continued. Margaret's estates had a male heir. Jasper gained a nephew whose existence could carry Tudor interests forward. But the word success conceals the human imbalance. The infant's future filled the documents. Margaret's experience disappeared. No surviving letter records what she thought when she first saw him. No eyewitness preserves whether she understood how narrowly she had survived. No record tells us whether grief for Edmund, fear of another marriage, relief, or exhaustion dominated the days that followed. History gives us the outcome. It denies us the room. Later Tudor memory would treat the birth as providential because the infant became king. Survival would be read backward as destiny. The danger would acquire meaning because a dynasty emerged from it. But on that January day, Henry was not a founder. He was a vulnerable newborn in a contested fortress. Margaret was not yet the formidable king's mother of Tudor ceremony. She was a 13-year-old widow who had delivered the child other people needed. And even after both survived, they would not be allowed to remain simply mother and son. Within months, Margaret began negotiating for another marriage. Her speed can look cold only when judged outside the world she inhabited. A wealthy young widow without a powerful husband risked being assigned another match. This time, Margaret attempted to secure protection before others selected it for her. Her son remained mainly under Jasper's guardianship in Wales. That separation was not abandonment. It reflected the military and political logic of aristocratic survival. Jasper could provide the armed protection an infant with valuable blood required. Margaret needed a husband capable of protecting her estates and position. The birth chamber had produced a boy. The Civil War would now decide whether he lived long enough to use the name he inherited. Margaret recovered sufficiently to arrange a future with a new husband, while still only 14. The marriage offered security and appears to have been far less exploitative than her first. No recorded child came from it. After her second husband died, Margaret married again, joining herself to another powerful noble household. Still, Henry remained her only child. His childhood was shaped by the same dynastic violence that had shaped hers. Political reversals placed him under different guardians. Yorkist victories weakened the Lancastrian cause. In 1471, Henry VI was killed, and Jasper fled with the young Henry Tudor. Henry spent approximately 14 years in exile. For much of that time, Margaret and her son were separated by distance, hostile governments, and the danger that correspondence could be intercepted. Yet she worked to protect his inheritance, secure his return, and negotiate his survival. The child created as a supporting branch of Lancastrian blood gradually became something more dangerous, a possible claimant. His hereditary right was weak. The Beaufort line had been legitimized but carried restrictions, and Henry descended through a woman. Under ordinary circumstances, he would not have stood close to the crown. Civil war changed ordinary circumstances. By the early 1480s, rival deaths and political collapse had removed stronger Lancastrian candidates. The Yorkist king's seizure of the throne created opposition among former supporters of his own dynasty. Margaret helped build contacts across the divided elite and supported a plan that linked Henry's claim to a Yorkist princess. The boy born at Pembroke was no longer merely surviving. He was gathering a coalition. In 1485, Henry landed in Wales, marched into England, and defeated the Yorkist king at Bosworth. He was crowned Henry VII. 28 years after Margaret entered the birth chamber, her only child became king. The victory transformed her status. She became My Lady the King's mother, an exceptionally wealthy landowner with influence at court. She managed estates, supported religious institutions, and founded colleges at Cambridge. Her household used the portcullis badge that became associated with Beaufort and Tudor authority. Yet even at the height of her power, ceremonial language continued to define her through motherhood. That title honored her. It also revealed the system's final judgment. Margaret's childhood marriage, pregnancy, and survival mattered because they had produced a king. The dynasty benefited. Henry VI's strategy outlived him. Edmund gained a royal line after death. Jasper survived to see his nephew crowned. Henry VII gained a kingdom. The physical and emotional cost remained attached to the one person whose words about it did not survive. Margaret later exercised real power. She was not merely a passive victim for the rest of her life. She negotiated, planned, patronized, and protected her interests with unusual skill. But her later strength should not be used to excuse what happened to her at 12 and 13. Survival is not retroactive consent. Power acquired decades later does not make childhood powerlessness disappear. Tudor memory turned Margaret's birth ordeal into providence. John Fisher praised her piety, charity, and extraordinary motherhood. Her tomb at Westminster celebrated her as the mother of Henry VII and grandmother of Henry VII. The dynasty honored the woman from whom it came, but honor can also hide. By making Margaret's suffering meaningful because it produced kings, Tudor commemoration softened the system that had placed a child in danger. The birth became miraculous. The pregnancy became destiny. The adults who accelerated the marriage became steps in a divine plan. Centuries later, a different legend appeared. Margaret was recast as a cold religious fanatic and murderous kingmaker. Writers long after her death suggested that she might have arranged the disappearance of two royal princes imprisoned in the Tower. No contemporary source accused her, and the supposed manuscript evidence offered by later writers has never been verified. Modern historical fiction revived the accusation because it creates a powerful villain. The saintly mother and the murderous mother seem like opposites. They perform the same erasure. The saint exists to validate Tudor destiny. The villain exists to make ambition look monstrous when exercised by a woman. Both can obscure the child who entered the political system with almost no meaningful control. Another myth is broader and more dangerous, that marriage at 12 and childbirth at 13 were normal in the Middle Ages. Aristocratic examples are remembered precisely because they were exceptional and politically visible. Most people married later. Legal possibility was not the same as social normality or physical safety. Margaret's story should not be used to claim that everyone accepted what happened without concern. Even historians examining the period describe Edmund's conduct as unseemly. The truth is not that medieval people knew nothing about youth. It is that wealth and dynastic value allowed powerful men to place political advantage above it. History remembered the crown that came from the chamber. It rarely asked what kind of system required a 13-year-old widow to create it. How did England turn Margaret Beaufort into a pregnant political asset? It began with wardship. Her father died. The crown gained control over a wealthy child's marriage and estates. Henry VI redirected that value toward his Tudor half-brothers. Edmund received a rich wife with Lancastrian blood. The marriage was consummated when Margaret was 12 because the system rewarded a legitimate heir more than it protected her youth. Then war removed her husband. At 13, she entered childbirth already widowed. The son she delivered survived the collapse of Lancaster, years under hostile control and long exile. In 1485, he defeated the Yorkist king and became Henry VII. That victory did not prove the suffering had been destined. It proved only that the child survived long enough to make the system's gamble look successful. We cannot prove the birth permanently injured Margaret. We cannot reconstruct her labor or recover her private thoughts. Historical honesty requires those limits. But the central horror needs no speculation. A child heiress was married for property and blood. A pregnancy was accelerated for dynasty. A 13-year-old widow delivered England's future king, Pembroke Castle preserved the birthplace. Tudor monuments preserved the triumph. The records preserved the boy who became Henry VII. And in the silence surrounding his mother, we can still see the price Dynasties expected children to pay.